back to Nunchucks.com. Again, it's good to see everyone again. We're at number 3. You should feel really good. We've made it to the 3rd session. That means you've watched, what, like an hour of videos? That's pretty good, pretty good. And I can't even imagine how much you've trained, hopefully that long, or at least longer. I just want to thank you guys for watching these videos and sharing your comments. I mean, it really means a lot to me to see all my hard work coming back at me in terms of the view counts going up and the minutes watched, and I get to see like all my stats kind of go up to see how much interest there is for this. You know, it just keeps me going. This is the conclusion to our beginner series. Now that doesn't mean that you know all of the beginning moves, but the foundations you should have. So we just got a few things to catch up on and to touch up on. And yes, I consider the figure 8 wrist rolls, even though it's more of an intermediate move, it's such a foundation that I just included it with the beginner series. If you can't get it yet, that's okay. Just keep working them. And if you have any questions at all, I can make subsequent videos to help you if you have any problems with that. Keep in mind, Nunchucks.com, again, Nunchucks.com. I mean, it's going to have links to the Facebook page, to the YouTube page if you don't know it already, and there's going to be a lot of exclusive material coming around the corner that you can only find on that site. So I wanted to tell you about what I'm working on after this last big beginner tutorial. We're going to start working on like more focused areas. For instance, like I'll be working on throws, or under the leg passes, or how to move when you're spinning. And it's going to be released every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Now if you feel ambitious, if you feel like you want more training, I'm creating something called Ninja Training. And all Ninja Training is at the cost of a cup of coffee per month. I'm going to release a second video on Saturday. So what that means is you'll get a video release on Wednesday and a video release on Saturday. With Ninja Training, it's not going to be material that you're not going to learn without it. It's just going to be twice as much material. So in the first month, most people are going to have 4 videos, right? But you'll have 8, which means you already know next month's videos for everyone else. And in 4 months, you'll have 8 months of videos. And it just goes on and on. It's going to still release in the same order. So as you're going through your Ninja Training, you're already going to know what's around the corner for everyone else. So if you've enjoyed the videos, I mean, there's no way you can lose, because even if you aren't Ninja Training, you're still going to be getting the videos. But if you're serious about nunchucks and you want to just keep this going at a faster pace, or you just can't stop absorbing the new moves, highly recommend that you get Ninja Training. It's like $5. It's like the cost of coffee. And it'll help pay for my website, it'll help pay for some of the costs of making this, and for future contests, and for many other things. So really consider it. Now, I've kind of thought about different ways that people can train, and basically I've nailed it down to about 3 different states. 3 states of training. The first state, of course, is what I call the train state. And the whole focus of the train state is to optimize. What you're doing right now when you're watching me and you're trying to replicate what I do, I would consider to be the train state. If you're working on your move and your planes are off, that's the train state. You're trying to focus, you're going to optimize, you're going to sharpen it up. So if it's a little bit wobbly, you're going to keep working on it until it's nice and straight. You know, or if you don't catch it right and you keep working on it, that's the train state. Most of the time, most people are working in the train state because that's how we learn. We'll watch a video and we'll try to replicate it, or we'll watch ourselves and we'll say, well, okay, I could do this a little bit better. So think about how often you spend in the train state, because you also want to consider the other 2 states as well. The second one is the play state. Now in the play state, this is kind of like if you think of a giant blackboard and you are a mad scientist and you're scribbling all your theories and your thoughts and ideas, and half of them don't work and you're dropping and you're making mistakes. Well, now you're in the play state, and that is basically you're playing around with theories. And I say the word theory a lot, but that's because I think there's a lot of concepts that you can like put together and see if it fits. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So when you're in the play state, this is basically where you're trying to find a way to innovate your style. Innovate it, so training, you're optimizing it, playing, you're innovating it. You're creating maybe signature moves, or you're expanding what you can do. Like, for instance, what if we bent the plane with a certain move? Or what if I did a turn? Or what if I did a jumping turn with the same thing? We're not really working on getting it to look perfect, we're just trying to see if what's possible. Once you figure out what's possible, you may take that move and move it over to the trained state so you can optimize it and make it look as awesome as possible. So now ask yourself, well, how long do I spend in the play state? Generally speaking, you may want to just think about how often you spend in the trained state and how often you spend in the play state, because both of those combined is going to create a really awesome aspect of your style. And probably one of the most important states is the flow state. And I call it the state of flow because this is like how you put it all together. If you'd like to think of spinning, think of it like I'm teaching you words, and the flow state is how you use that to create a story. This is your energy. This is the way you communicate it. This is like your transitions between moves. So it doesn't look just like you're moving from technique to technique, but it actually looks like you're creating and you're communicating something. Like when you watch, I always like to say dance, because it's not really about moving from technique to technique, as I've said in the past. It's more about just creating a story. So your flow state is how well connected you are to yourself and how well you can connect to the audience in the sense of creating a story or an atmosphere or taking them away. How do you train the flow state? That's really simple. Play your favorite music and see how you can lose yourself. Once you get lost in your state of flow and you're not thinking about optimizing and you're not thinking about innovating, but you're just feeling it and you're just moving with the flow, you're probably in the flow state right there. You're just completely lost in the moment. So think about how often you're in the flow state. How often are you in the play state? How often are you in the train state? Can you kind of balance them out so you can kind of create the mixture of your style? It's almost like these elements are going to create what you're eventually going to be like as a performer or as a spinner. Let's say you've been spinning for a month straight and you feel like, God, I've plateaued. I can't figure out why I can't get any new moves. Well, you might be spending too much time in one of the states. For instance, maybe you're optimizing all your moves too much and you haven't spent enough time just playing or just flowing, you know? And if you spend too much in one of the states, that's often a time when we do feel like we've plateaued or hit the top, because we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Even if we're playing a lot, if we don't train it, it may not ever become a part of our flow. You know, we may not actually incorporate it. So we're seeing all these new moves, but at the same time, we're not actually incorporating it. So all the possibilities are there, but we haven't actually worked it into our system. So think of the three states, and again, if you ever feel stuck, think if you're neglecting any of those three. And chances are you probably are. Keep that in mind, because that might actually keep you moving forward the whole time when you think, you might not be. So let's get down to techniques. I want to start with our over-the-shoulder passes. You remember this. This is from the very beginning of the videos. We're going to work on something called the behind-the-neck pass, and it looks like this. Boom, right there. The trick to this move is it's all guts. And what I mean by all guts is you're putting this up by your shoulder, and as long as you swing it in a straight line and you follow through, it's going to work. If you hold back at all, or if you don't swing it in that line, it's usually going to tap you in your shoulder instead. As always, since the chuck's going by your face, it can feel a lot scarier and make you hold back, but it's actually the holding back that's going to stop you from doing this move. So let me show you how it works. So we're doing our over-the-shoulder passes, like so. Usually we've been standing off to the side when we're doing it. But I'm doing it here to demonstrate so you can see it. We're going to tap our hip, go up to our shoulder like this, but instead of our hand grabbing underneath like we would be doing, so our right hand is going over, our left hand is going to actually cross by our cheek instead of grabbing down here. So here, by the cheek, instead of down grabbing here, this protects your face from ever being hit. Now, this hand, I'm going to put this down for a second. You're thinking of two things. One, you're thinking of drawing a very straight line across, okay? It's probably right around the nose level. So, right around the nose level, it's very horizontally. The part two is you're reaching all the way across. If I turn around, it almost looks like I'm touching the back of my neck with my hand. I'm actually feeling that connection. Now you don't have to later on, but when you're first starting and getting the feel for this move, you're going to want to actually touch the back of your neck. See this? It needs to follow through this much, at least when you first start out. It needs to follow through that much in order for it to cross itself all the way over. This hand is going to be open, and it should be catching it. So, hand up. Step 1, swing all the way across. Step 2, touch it by your neck and follow through. If you're hitting your shoulder like this, it's either one of those two things. First, make sure that it's straight across like this. For instance, if I do the throw from here and it comes upwards at an angle, it's going to keep traveling in that straight line, only inversed behind me. So what we want to make sure is it's very horizontal, like that. That way, as you can see, as my hand stops, the momentum is just going to keep going in that same direction. So just make sure that your line is straight across. Boom, right there. Okay. Number 2 is make sure you don't hold back. Like, for instance, if you're too far out here, the chuck may not have enough space to clear. It may be really scary, so you hold it back here. Maybe you're not throwing it hard enough because you're like, oh God, it's going to hit my face. But here's what I say, make sure it hits your face. I mean, when you're swinging it, that's what you want it to do, except for your hand's going to be in the way, so you know it's not going to hit your face. But if you're thinking, I'm going to hit my face, that's what I want to do, it's going to go straight into your hands. If you can't get the grip yet, remember you can always just hold your hand open and just let it bounce until you can feel it and grab it. But that's essentially the behind the neck. And then your other hand grabs it, and then you can go to the same side that grabs it. So if I grab it with my left, I'm going to take it down with my left, and we're going to pull it back up. So hip, up, hip, up, hip, up. Swing across. Hip, up, hip, up. Anytime we can swing it across, both directions. Here, here. Whoops, I missed that one. But you get the point of it. Do it both sides, both directions, and you should be good. So I'm really big on being able to turn and to move, and I know we haven't worked a lot of those yet, but that's all coming down, you know, in the upcoming episodes. But I do want to show you this, because this is a foundation of movement that I find. The concept is simply a standard circular spin. Either it's going clockwise or counterclockwise, and we want to be able to move with it. Okay? Those are actually 2 different spinning movements that you can use, and if you practice with both your hands, you should be able to spin the chuck. Anytime you're in a front grip, you should be able to turn anytime. And all you have to do is learn 2 moves and be able to do it with your right and with your left. Here's how it looks. The first move is like this. Let's say I grab it with my right hand and I am spinning it counterclockwise, like so. Both of these moves you may want to use a wall, because the wall will help you with your planes. You want to have very straight planes when you do this. So let's say I'm standing towards a wall. You may want to do this. Remember we were talking about this earlier, how you're practicing how to spin the chuck, because as you're standing down here, there's actually it's very subtle, but it's definitely an adjustment for how you have to spin up here as opposed to here, as opposed to here. So your first move is going to look like this. We're going to take the chuck in our right hand and we're going to spin it this direction. Okay, it's going to go counterclockwise. Next, we're going to turn 180 degrees, and then we're going to do a pass. Now there's 2 ways to do this pass. Let me show you the recommended pass, the way that I prefer. It's a same stick grab, like this. Essentially, both my thumbs are pointing down. This hand is going to grab, the hand that's grabbing is slightly above the other one, so when I let go, this hand will continue the spin, like that. Let me show you again. Here, turn, keep the same direction, you're just turning your body, but you're not stopping this. And as this hits here, which will be 9 o'clock when I'm looking at it from my direction, 9 o'clock, it's swinging down and the other hand grabs it. The reason why I prefer the same stick grab is because it adds an extra rotation. As you notice, see that? The momentum itself causes it to rotate on its own. Now, this may be a little bit harder than this one, which is the opposite stick. See how I'm grabbing the opposite stick? That's why it's called an opposite stick pass. The opposite stick, but then it stops. So it doesn't quite have as many rotations, so I always like more rotations, of course. I just think this tends to have more of an effect. But you can totally do the same move by doing the opposite stick grab. So we're spinning it counterclockwise with our hand, we're turning, we're going to pass, we're going to turn, And finally, we're going to return it back to our original hand. Now, the hardest part to this move, obviously, is going to be this pass. So let me show you a way that you can practice this, no matter what pass it is, whether it's the opposite stick grab or the same stick grab. This is a good way to work your planes. First, of course, you can use the wall here. You want to make sure that this doesn't touch the wall. The nice thing about a wall is you can start off farther away from the wall, and as you get better and better, get closer and closer to the wall, so you have to keep it much tighter without hitting it. If you want to just practice, well, how can I just get really good at spinning in the back plane? I'm going to show you this exercise. It works really well. So we're standing with our right hand, spinning counterclockwise. We're going to turn 180 degrees. We're going to do the pass, but instead of turning around, we're going to lift it up and we're going to lift our shoulder. Now, if you look at it, my elbow is actually perpendicular to the way I'm facing, okay? Now, I'm turning my head a little bit just to make it a little bit easier, otherwise it's a really awkward stretch. So here's what it looks like. My elbow's pointing, it's kind of pointing right at the camera. So if there was a wall here, and I'm doing my spin, the tip of my elbow could touch the wall right here. This is a bounce point, basically, here. And I'm creating a bend so the nunchuck actually stops its momentum and it goes the opposite direction. Once I do that, I can practice the pass with my left hand, and then once again, point my elbow out and I let it bounce this direction. We rotate the direction, spin it, bounce, 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 bounce. This is really good for working the planes behind your back, because if you miss it, you won't be able, it won't hit you, you won't be able to bounce it, of course, if you're too far. Or if it's off a little bit, it's not going to bounce off the back of your tricep. Do this very slowly, very slowly. Don't do this fast at all. Just pass. See if you can get it to rest right by your shoulder. Pass. Nice and relaxed. And we do an opposite stick grab and pass it. Or same stick and pass. Now you also know if you do an opposite side, you're stuck. Like your hands actually freeze the nunchuck. So you can do spins. There are advantages to it for sure. And if you do the same stick grab, well, it stays in motion or it'll just kind of flop around. So if you are looking to stop the motion, you're going to want to do an opposite stick pass. If you're wanting to keep the momentum going fast, you do a same stick pass. There's actually an advantage and a disadvantage to both. You can even see just the way that it looks. It has a different vibe to it, okay? So once you get really good at that, you should be easily able to go from here, and you're doing the pass, and then we're just turning around with it. But as you can see, it's that same style of pass that we've been working on here, except we're just not bouncing it. And of course, if you know that pass, you can take them out and return back to where you stood. So, if you do this pass, you can do the fake, which will reverse the direction of the rotation and allow you to do the next move that we're going to work on. Excuse me. Again, let's try this one more time though, first, before we go into the second move. Spinning it counterclockwise. 1, turn 180 degrees. 2, do the pass. 3, turn 180 degrees. 4, put it in your hand again, and your right hand again. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can move with it. I don't have to stand still. I recommend you move with it. So anytime it's moving this direction in your right hand, counterclockwise, you can do it this way. If you're doing it with your left hand, it's just, of course, everything is the opposite. Boom, like that. Again, 1, 2, 3, pass. See? We reverse it. Do it with our right hand. Reverse it. Boom. Do it with our left. So practice it with both your left and your right, and then we're going to work the other one. Okay. We'll work it off this too. We'll put it into a combo. So we're going counterclockwise. I'm sorry, and we go for the pass, but this time we bounce it and we return back. So we just came back the way we went because we balanced it. Now we're in the opposite direction. It's spinning clockwise instead of counterclockwise. This move's a little bit trickier, but here's what it looks like essentially. Like that, okay? The hardest part about this move is going to be getting your elbow to rotate over your head. So what I want you to do is to practice this move without it spinning. First, we're going to turn 180 degrees. Second, we're just going to take the chuck and we're going to rest it on our shoulder like this. Now here's the part that I want you to work on. Your head is going to go through this space in here. So imagine that the back of your hand is going to roll behind your head and it's going to create this space. Do you see how it creates this little triangular space that your head will slip through, like this. Once it slips through it, you're going to turn into it. So, turn 180 degrees. Lift your hand up to your shoulder, like this. It's not spinning right now, of course. Now, see how I'm creating this space for my head to slip through. Like that, and down. You can also extend your arm out a little bit more, like this. It's actually easier. It'll look better though, it'll look better and feel better if you keep it tight in your body and roll it through that way. You can practice though with your arms out wider when you first start. Here's what it'll look like. Here's what it looks like tighter. Slightly different effect. So next, very last thing we're going to do, of course, is we're going to do it with rotations. We're going to move it, it's going to be rotating. As soon as it comes here, it's just going to do one rotation over, like that. So it's here, rotate, and over. So again, once it hits about 3 o'clock, we're going to start it off. Rotate, and over. Once it hits right here, 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock right there, we're bringing it through. 3 o'clock, we're taking it through the elbow and turning around. Of course, be able to do it with both your hands. First, we're just going to lift it through here, throw the elbow through, and turn into it. Turn, bring it up to your shoulder, create the space, elbow through, turn into it. Once you do that, you have access to, no matter how it's spinning, as long as you're in a front grip, you'll always be able to turn with it. If it's in my left hand and it's spinning the same direction, if it's in my right hand, it's going to be the opposite pass. If we rotate it, it's going to be the exact opposite. See that? For the second pass, of course, you can always walk through with it, just like the other one. We can keep moving with it. So now you have complete access. No matter which direction, which way it's spinning, you can always get out of it. Wonderful, right? I love that move. Practice that left and right, and just keep doing it. I mean, this is great. Now you have access to where you can create lines and walk back and forth with it. You can either do it with figure eights, or now you can do it with these circular spins. So another good move that you can use is something called, I call it a collapse. If you have a shorter chain like this, if it's shorter, it'll work better, and if you have a heavier chuck, it'll work better than if you're using a lightweight chuck. We'll do it with a lightweight though, just to make it easier, but I will show it to you on a heavier one too. The reason why I say a heavier works better for this particular move is because you can feel the weight a little bit easier. Being able to feel the weight will allow you to know exactly when to stop it and to pull it in and out. On a lightweight it still works, it's just a little bit flimsier is all. First thing you want to work on though when you're using a chuck is to be able to basically, first we're kind of trying to rotate it back and forth like this. I want to be able to get it to hold itself exactly as if I was holding it with another hand, except for we're going to let it float in the air like this. It's almost like a half moon. Like that, okay? Here. See if you can just kind of straighten. I'm pointing my hand and I'm moving it in a half moon. If I didn't have my hand, it kind of looks like I'm moving it in a half moon. Like that. Half moon, half moon. But I'm not letting it shoot up in the air. I'm kind of pointing it to where it can point sideways. The moment I feel it hit that point where they're both sideways, I'm going to pull it back. And these three fingers are going to open, the chuck's going to start flying, and I'm going to grab it, and it's going to end that way. So step one, first figure out how you can kind of keep it up in a straight line like this. Ground, up. Step 2, the moment it comes in a straight line, I'm going to pull it back. See how it's kind of like a lever? It's almost like the rotation point is in the center of the chuck. Zoom, like that. That's going to cause it to arc back, and then your hand's going to open up. If you have short chain, it'll be a really tight collapse like this, see? But since we have long chain, it may not be perfect. And that's perfectly okay. Because what you lose when you have a short chain is you lose all the ability to do chain manipulations. And we definitely like our chain manipulations here, so it's really good that you do have a longer one. However, with stalls, which are being able to stop the chuck, and with your collapse, the shorter is actually a little bit better for this. Like I said, like every chuck has its pros and cons, but it's still important to learn this move. So we give it like a float and we pull it in. Once we pull it in, it's almost like we're going to shoot it out, like a javelin almost. These 3 fingers are going to open up and we're going to push it back out. So stall, pull back, grab it with your fingers, push it through, out. I don't use this very often, but it is good to know. It's good. It's kind of like the clutch. It's a good way to stop it. Say we're doing a reverse figure 8s in the end. As we're doing the reverse figure 8, I can pull it up into that float move. So reverse figure 8, float it up, and then collapse it. And then we're good. Maybe we're done. Or maybe we want to light the chuck. We can definitely, if we're spinning and all of a sudden one of the chucks goes out, because we're using fire chucks right now, we pull it up, do a collapse, and they'll light each other again, and then we'll pull it back out. So let's get into some chain manipulations then. This is called a moon wave. It's probably, when I go to the festivals where I teach, this is probably one of the most popular moves. It's really easy to do and it looks really fancy. Basically it looks like this. So, the moon wave, what it essentially is, it's called a symmetrical crossing. And a symmex is where, because of the nature of the chuck, you have 2 symmetrical sides and they cross into each other. That's the beauty of this prop, is you have a stick, a chain, and then a symmetrical stick on the other end. So let's use that and create a moon wave. The way to do a moon wave is you're going to hold your hands out in front of you, both grips, both of the backs of your fists are feigning, I can't talk, are pointing towards the sky. Now I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to pull it forward sagittally. You may not be able to see this. If this is poi, you're thinking of a butterfly. You're thinking of a butterfly in poi, which is one hand is slightly in front of the other so they can cross past each other without hitting. If you don't know poi, that's okay. I'm going to show it to you right now, this concept. I'm going to exaggerate it. My right hand's going to pull forward. Do you see that? That way when I drop it, they have space. These chucks have space to cross past each other without hitting. If I don't, they're going to bash into each other. If I do, they're going to cross past each other. See that? If I don't, they're just going to crash. But if I do, oops, if I do, they're going to pass by each other. Here's how it works. Take your thumbs, put it underneath the tabs of the chucks. Or basically, if you have a string, it's right where the string starts. Right there. Now, if I put too much pressure on it, they're not going to go down. So I have to be sure to give enough space for them to cross into each other like this. Now, of course, they're going to crash, so take your right hand and pull it forward a little bit. Now let go. And they should pass by each other like that. The moment they cross, I want you to take your hands and pull them up. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just take them and pull them up. And then what they're going to do is they're going to bounce upwards. All you have to do from there is just close your hand. So, one is your hand goes slightly forward. 2 is you open your thumbs. 3 is you pull it up, and 4 is you grab. That's 4 steps, but really it's a quick move. It looks like this. So if I counted it slowly, the 1, 2, 3, 4, you don't really want to think in 4 steps. Otherwise you'll be like, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I guess I have to break it all down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it lifts up like that. So push it forward, drop it down, lift it up. Again, drop it down. The moment they cross, you pull up, and you lift it up, and it'll land right in your hands, and you close it. To get out, you do the exact same thing, and it opens itself up. Again, from here, pull it forward, drop it down. As soon as they cross, lift it up and close your hands. As soon as it crosses, lift it up, close your hands. Boom, boom. Moonwave. Now, I'm going to show another variation of the moonwave. We're going to start with our hand down by our waist. We're going to have our thumbs on the tab. This time, we're just going to pull our hand up, and it's going to basically, we're going to moonwave ourselves up to the top, like this. The way it works is really, the nice thing about this moonwave is you don't have to like bounce it up and down. You basically just open up your hands, and the momentum of pulling it up is going to automatically cause it to fly into your hands. So all you have to do basically, without this, all I have to do is open my hands, pull it up. I'll do it in slow motion. I open my hands, I pull it up, and I close it. Because as I'm pulling it up, that momentum of just pulling it straight up is going to cause them to cross into each other. So, I'm here. See that? See how all I have to do is lift my hands and they just float into my hands? So all I have to do is close right here. So here, up. Again, here, up. When do we do it? We can do this time anytime we're doing our, anytime we're doing rips. Here, here. Just switch your grip, and then we can do this move. Now, once you cross and you're at the very top, the secret to getting out of this is you're actually going to take your thumbs, and when you open your hands, your thumbs are going to exaggerate and they're going to pull outwards like a triangle. It's going to have this like triangular pull. So, from down, pull it up and catch. Once you're here, I'm going to open my hands, and there may not be enough momentum or pressure as we're going down, so we're taking our thumbs and we're kind of pushing a little bit of pressure on the outsides. And what will happen, even if my hands are open, if you notice, if my thumbs pull out, the chucks just kind of straighten themselves out like that on their own. With that extra momentum, it should be a piece of cake right there. And the last moonwave variation that I want to show you is, we're doing our moonwave like this. Don't think that you have to catch it all the time. You don't have to catch it all the time. You can do something called a dribble, like that. And the dribble is basically where you would catch it, you just hit it again with your palm. So now you can catch it if you want, or you can bounce it and do a little dribble, like so. Most common mistake for error is just not having enough space and they crash into each other. That's really it. The rest of it is just going to float in your hands as long as you give it that little bit of a tug. So you know the figure 8 wrist roll, right? Figure 8 wrist roll is we're spinning with our right hand if we're going counterclockwise. Every time it hits 12 o'clock, we cross over. Remember? This is our figure 8. Every time it hits 12 o'clock, you cross over. The wrist roll part is every time it hits 6 o'clock, we do a wrist roll. So we're at 12 o'clock, boom, we're 6 o'clock, so we wrist roll. We go to 12 o'clock, we change. We go to 6 o'clock, it's a wrist roll. Goes back up to 12, we change. Go to 6 o'clock, we do a wrist roll. Okay, so let's get into the figure 8 wrist roll. First, you're going to want to be in a back grip. So, since we're not used to doing back grips, let's say we're doing a figure 8 regularly. Let's say we're doing our figure 8 wrist rolls regularly, right? Once we're back to our front grip, all we're going to do is kind of like, we're going to do a tuck, like this. Now we're going to let it go, and we're going to spin it clockwise. So, we're doing our figure 8 wrist roll, tuck. Then we're going to release it, and we're going to let our hands spin clockwise. Once that happens, we're going to do a wrist roll so we have it in a back grip. There's a lot of ways we can actually do it. I mean, we can do it from rips too, right here, and we're in a reverse grip as well. But for now, I'm just trying to find a good transition point, and I think the best one right now is to use the clutch, since you know it, and then to pull it back out, and then you're reversing the direction of the spin so you can wrist roll it. Now, once we're in a back grip, you remember the idea of a reverse figure 8 wrist roll is every time it hits 6 o'clock, it crosses over to the other side. So 6 o'clock, crosses over. Cross. 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 Every time it's 6 o'clock, it crosses over. That means, obviously, the reverse, every time it hits 12 o'clock is when we do a wrist roll. So, we do the clutch, we reverse our spin, we do a hand roll. And the very first thing, and this is actually probably the hardest thing, is our pinky finger is now leading. So we're going to slash up like this. Once we hit 12 o'clock, our hand is going to wrist roll. Now we're in a front grip. It's going to come down, it's going to slash up, and once we hit 12 o'clock, it's going to wrist roll back into a back grip. The most awkward part is the part that I'm starting with. I figure that way you can just work this. Because once we're in this grip, the slash, as you look, kind of looks a little bizarre. It kind of looks like you're leading with your pinky finger upwards, like that. But as we do that, it's actually a really seamless transition straight into that wrist roll right there. So, clutch, spin, here. You can make a big swooping circle, and then do the wrist roll, 6 o'clock, wrist roll at 12, move at 6, wrist roll at 12, move at 6, wrist roll at 12. It looks like this. Now I think I almost always add an extra beat to all of my wrist rolls. So if you see me go beat and then do a wrist roll, you don't have to do that, I just prefer it. Like that. So, here's something nice that you may have noticed then. We're doing the front wrist roll, clutch, reverse. It's really easy to get into it. And if you want to do the other one, do you remember this where we're going like, doing this tricep bounce? If you're doing the reverse figure 8 wrist roll, you can take it into a tricep bounce. It's the exact same thing. My arm is going out and it's bouncing, except for I'm not turned this way, I'm just kind of turned to the side. And then we can go back to the forward wrist roll. So, forward wrist roll, clutch, reverse, backwards wrist roll, tricep bounce. Forward wrist roll, clutch, reverse, backwards wrist roll, tricep bounce. Wonderful thing about the wrist rolls, and we'll get into this once you get the reverse figure 8 wrist roll, we're going to connect them together, and what you'll have is the ability to move any direction that you want. And you can just use little bounces. All this is just a reverse figure 8 wrist roll here, and a forward wrist roll here. This whole thing was nothing but figure 8 wrist rolls and reverse figure 8 wrist rolls. Again. Wrist roll, reverse, forwards, backwards, forwards, forwards, bounce, backwards. There's that over the shoulder move. See? So much opens up. But first you have to be able to get the reverse figure 8 wrist roll, and then we're going to start working on connecting them together. Practice, 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 both sides. One last time, just so we got it. Wrist roll, slash up. Once we hit 12 o'clock, wrist roll. Once we hit 6 o'clock, slash up, wrist roll. Once we hit down here, slash up, wrist roll, slash up, wrist roll, slash up, wrist roll. Do on both sides, and you will be gold. So my camera is actually overheating, and it's not going to last too much longer, and I'm running out of space, so I have to make this short. So I'm going to show you one combo, and then we'll be calling it. Okay, so there's one last combo I want to show you. My camera is actually overheating, and it's shut off already, so I may not be able to get this, but hopefully we'll have enough time to get this again. With our right hand, we're going to do, in the front grip, we're going to do a wrist roll, we're going to pull it back, wrist roll, and we're going to pull it to the front, wrist roll, and we're going to grab it. It's basically the figure 8 wrist roll that we've been working on right here, right? So we're going to start it again here. Front grip, wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll, grab. And we're going to rip, rip. We're going to rip it twice. On the third rip, we're going to rip it right into a wrist roll here. We're going to pull it back, wrist roll, and wrist roll. So rip, rip, wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll, rip, rip, wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll, rip, rip, wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll. We're basically doing front to front forward wrist rolls with both of our hands. It gives us a lot of movement, a lot of advantage. 1, 2, 3, rip, rip. 1, 2, 3. Now here's one more thing. You can adjust the rips. For instance, you don't have to do a rip here. You can move your hand while you're doing a rip. Like this. Boom. We can go to the sides with rips. We can do anti-rips. I'll get more into that into more detail later. But for now, what I want you to do is start working your rips and see if you can move your hands while you're doing the rips. See if you can start adjusting it. And you'll realize you'll change the way that the rips even look simply by moving your hand. So wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll, rip, rip, wrist roll, wrist roll, wrist roll, rip, rip. Work on that combo. It's pretty awesome and it's really good for your wrist rolls. I'm going to have to make this quick. We've got more to show. There's so much more I want to show you. But practice, practice, practice that figure 8 wrist roll. And also, don't forget nunchucks.com. Share this with everyone. I want to get 100 Nunchuckers. I'm really excited to see like what's around the corner, and keep spinning. Work on these moves. So much around the corner. It's going to be awesome.